There comes a moment in some people's lives when something simply breaks. Not in a dramatic way, not with a bang, but silently, invisibly. And suddenly you realize you can no longer do something you've done your entire life. Pretend. Pretend you're okay when you're not. Pretend you agree when you don't. Pretend you care when you don't. Pretend you're normal when you never were. Carl Jung mapped this phenomenon over a century ago. He called it persona dissolution, and he was very clear about one thing most people don't want to hear. This inability to pretend isn't a weakness. It's a sign that something profound is happening inside you, something that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. Studies as recent as 2024 have confirmed that pretending demands a huge cognitive effort from your brain. Your prefrontal cortex has to work continuously to keep the mask in place, to suppress your authentic reactions, to calculate what others expect, to perform a version of you that isn't you. And when your brain starts going through certain changes, this effort becomes unsustainable. If you've reached a point where you simply can't perform normalcy anymore, if superficial conversations exhaust you in a way they never did before, if you look at your social and professional life and think, I just can't do this anymore. This video was made specifically for you, because what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes isn't just an explanation, it's a liberation. I'm going to show you exactly what Carl Jung discovered about why certain people reach this point. I'll connect it with the latest neuroscience on the cognitive cost of pretending. And I'm going to give you something no conventional therapist will tell you, that this inability to pretend could be the beginning of the most important thing that will ever happen in your life. But first, you need to understand what the persona is and why you developed one. Jung defined the persona as a mask designed on one side to make a definite impression on others, and on the other, to conceal the true nature of the individual. The term comes from Latin and originally meant the mask worn by actors in Roman theatre, and that's the perfect metaphor. The persona is the role you play on the stage of social life. The persona isn't inherently bad, it's a necessary adaptation. When you were a child, you quickly learned that certain parts of you were acceptable and others were not. That certain emotions were allowed and others were punished. That certain ways of being were rewarded and others were rejected. And you did what any intelligent human being would do. You created a version of yourself that maximized acceptance and minimized rejection. That version is the persona, and it worked for years, maybe for decades. It helped you navigate your family, your school, your work, your relationships. It protected you. It opened doors for you. It kept you safe. But here's the problem that Jung identified. The persona has a cost, and the longer you use it, the higher that cost becomes. Jung wrote that a man cannot get rid of himself in favor of an artificial personality without suffering consequences. The attempt to do this is always an act of violence against one's own nature, and sooner or later, nature takes its revenge. That revenge of nature is what you're experiencing now. The inability to pretend. The exhaustion. The feeling that every social interaction that requires a mask drains you in a way it didn't before. This isn't ordinary burnout. It's your brain saying, I can't take it anymore. Neuroscience explains this very precisely. When you lie or pretend, your brain has to do several things at once. First, it needs to suppress the authentic response. What you really feel, what you really think, what you really want to say. This suppression happens primarily in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and it consumes energy. Second, your brain needs to create and maintain the false response. Calculate what would be appropriate to say, which facial expression to use, which tone of voice to adopt. This also happens in the prefrontal cortex, and it also consumes energy. Third, your brain needs to constantly monitor whether the lie is working, observe the reactions of others, adjust the performance in real time. This involves multiple regions, including the anterior cingulate cortex, and guess what? It also consumes energy. Meta-analyses of neuroimaging studies have shown that deception consistently activates a broad network of brain regions: dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, anterior insula, anterior cingulate cortex, inferior parietal lobule. This entire circuit working simultaneously. This entire circuit consuming glucose and oxygen. This entire circuit becoming exhausted. And here's what most people don't understand. Pretending to be normal when you're not normal is neurologically identical to lying. Your brain doesn't distinguish between lying to others about a fact and lying to others about who you are. For the prefrontal cortex, it's the same thing, the same effort, the same cost. So if you've spent years, or decades, pretending to be someone you're not, your prefrontal cortex is exhausted, literally exhausted, and at some point, it simply stops being able to maintain the effort. The mask begins to slip, not because you decided to, but because your brain decided for you. Jung predicted this in an almost prophetic way. He wrote about the moment when something inside you refuses to continue pretending. He said it's subtle at first: irritation, boredom, a fog you can't name. And then it grows teeth. Jobs feel like prisons. Relationships feel like drains. The life you've built feels like a costume you can no longer take off. Jung called this the threshold of individuation, the point at which the psyche begins to rebel when the persona no longer serves life, but suppresses it. And this rebellion isn't optional. It's automatic, it's inevitable, and it's exactly what you're experiencing. But hold on, because this is where things get really interesting. The anterior insula plays a crucial role in this process. The insula is a region of the brain hidden within the lateral sulcus, and it's responsible for something called interoception, the ability to feel the internal signals of your body: heartbeat, breathing, muscle tension, stomach discomfort, all those sensations that tell you how you really are. Stanford research from 2024 described the insula as a hub for salience, cognitive control, and interoceptive processing. In other words, the insula is where your brain integrates what you feel inside with what's happening outside. It's where you know if something is true or false for you, not logically, viscerally. And here is the crucial discovery. Studies have shown that when people lie or put on a facade, the anterior insula is activated, along with the regions of cognitive control, but not in a good way. The insula registers the dissonance between what you're expressing and what you really feel. And that dissonance is experienced as emotional discomfort, guilt, anxiety, a general sense of unease. This explains why pretending has become so unbearable for you. Your insula has become more sensitive, whether through meditation, through therapy, through transformative experiences, or simply through getting older and getting to know yourself better. Something has made your insula more connected to your internal states, and now it screams. Every time you try to feign something, what was once a mild discomfort that you could ignore is now an alarm that you can't turn off. Your entire body reacts when you try to be someone you're not. And this isn't just being sensitive. This is neurology. It's your insula doing exactly what it was designed to do, to warn you when something is wrong. Carl Jung understood this intuitively, even without access to MRI technology. He wrote that the body knows before the mind, that physical symptoms are often the first manifestation of psychic conflicts, and that ignoring these signals is ignoring the deepest wisdom of your being. So it's what happens when you reach this point, when pretending has become impossible, when the persona is crumbling. Jung mapped out 3 possible paths. The first path is what he called a regressive restoration of the persona. The person desperately tries to rebuild the old mask. They revert to old behaviors, try to feign even harder, Ignore the body's signals, force normalcy. And it does work. For a while. Until it doesn't. And the collapse when it comes in is much worse. Jung said that along this path, the person laboriously tries to patch up their social reputation within the confines of a much more limited personality, pretending that they are how they were before the crucial experience, but they will never be how they were before. And pretending they are only prolongs the suffering. The second path is collapse. The person simply can't go on anymore. Depression, severe anxiety, total burnout, an existential crisis. The mask falls in an uncontrolled way, and the person is left exposed without having built anything to replace the persona. This is the most painful path. And it's often the path of those who ignored the signs for too long. The third path is what Carl Jung really recommended: conscious individuation. Instead of trying to rebuild the old mask, or collapsing under its weight, you consciously choose to let it go. You step into the discomfort of not knowing who you are without the persona. You explore what remains. Size when the mask falls, and you build something new, something more authentic, something that doesn't require so much effort to maintain. Jung said that the goal of individuation isn't to eliminate the persona. It's to develop a more realistic and flexible persona that helps you navigate society but doesn't collide with, nor hide, your true self. A mask that you can put on and take off consciously, not a mask that's fused to your face. Neuroscience supports this. Studies show that authentic people have less activation in the regions of cognitive control during social interactions. They don't need to work so hard to maintain the performance because they aren't performing. They are just being. And that frees up cognitive energy for other things: creativity, real connection, presence. So, how do you navigate this process? How do you go from the point you're at now to the point that Jung described? First, you stop blaming yourself for the inability to pretend. This isn't weakness, it's evolution. Your brain is telling you that you've outgrown the phase where the mask was necessary. You've grown. The mask hasn't grown with you. And now, it simply doesn't fit anymore. Second, you start paying attention to the signals from the insula. That discomfort you feel when you're pretending, that tension in your stomach, that feeling that something is wrong. This isn't neurosis. It's embodied wisdom. Your body is guiding you towards authenticity. Listen. Third, you start experimenting with authenticity in safe environments. It doesn't have to be all at once. You don't need to blow up your life. But start saying what you really think, in contexts where the risk is low. Start showing parts of yourself that you've always hidden, and see what it's like. See how it feels. See that the world doesn't end. Fourth, you accept that you're going to lose some things in the process: jobs that required the old mask, relationships that were based on the persona, friends who liked who you were pretending to be. These losses hurt, but they are necessary because what remains after them is real, and what was based on the mask was not. Fifth, you find your tribe, people who have also gone through this process, people who value authenticity, people who don't need you to pretend. Jung said that in individuation, you become a stranger to your tribe of origin. But he also said that you find a new tribe, a tribe of people who have also chosen the third path. The truth is that most people will spend their entire lives pretending, maintaining masks, paying the cognitive cost without realizing it. And there's nothing wrong with them. That's their path. But if you've reached a point where you simply can't anymore, that's not your path. You're being called to something different, something more difficult in the short term, but infinitely more liberating in the long term. The life of someone who is authentic, The life of someone who doesn't need to spend energy maintaining masks. The life of someone who can simply be. Carl Jung wrote that the journey of individuation isn't about presenting a perfect version of ourselves to the world. It's about becoming totally, authentically human, with all our flaws and imperfections. Individuation isn't a destination, but a continuous process. It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and the courageous act of becoming who we really are. That courageous act starts exactly where you are now, at the point where pretending has become impossible, at the point where the mask is falling, at the point where your brain is refusing to continue the performance. This point is not the end, it's the beginning. And on the other side of this process, what awaits you isn't perfection. It's freedom. The freedom of not needing to calculate every word, every expression, every reaction. The freedom to simply exist as you are. The freedom to use energy to live, instead of using energy to pretend you're living. Andrew Huberman said in his episodes about cognitive load that resetting attention requires energy, and over time becomes exhausting. And that's exactly what happens when you pretend. You're constantly resetting, constantly monitoring, constantly adjusting. And that is exhausting. But when you stop pretending, that energy becomes available for other things, for creating, for connecting, for really living. The inability to pretend, to feign, to put on a facade that you're experiencing something, isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your brain freeing you from a prison that you built so carefully that you forgot it was a prison. And now the bars are dissolving. And you're scared because you don't know who you are without them. But you will discover. And what you discover will be much better than any mask you've ever worn, if you've made it this far. If you felt that someone finally explained what you're experiencing. I want to ask you a favor. YouTube has that golden heart beneath the video, the super thanks. When you click on it, you are saying, I also can't pretend anymore. And I'm at peace with that. Each super thanks is a declaration of authenticity, a refusal to continue the performance. And that's exactly what Carl Jung admired, the courage to let the mask fall, even without knowing what you'll find beneath it. Andrew Huberman at Stanford often talks about the power of embracing discomfort for growth. This is exactly that principle in action. Now, I have a question for you, and I really want you to answer in the comments. Carl Jung said that persona dissolution is absolutely necessary for individuation. At what point in your life did you realize you couldn't pretend anymore? What was the situation, the context, the moment when something inside you simply refused to continue the performance? Tell your story. It can be short. Face, it can be long, but be honest. Because when you write about that moment, something changes. That inability to pretend, which seemed like a problem, transforms into a milestone. And maybe someone reading your comment will realize they're not alone, that other people are also going through this, that the mask falling isn't the end of the world. It's the beginning of something much better. And in that recognition, something becomes complete. The shame of not being able to pretend transforms into pride in being authentic. And the journey that seems solitary is revealed to be shared by thousands of people who also chose the third path. Carl Jung knew that this path isn't for everyone. Most people will prefer the security of the mask, the predictability of the persona, the comfort of never having to confront who they really are, and there's no judgment in that. Everyone has their own path. As Andrew Huberman says, we all have different levels of tolerance for uncertainty. But if you're here, if this video found you, if these words make sense in a way that nothing else has, you're probably not the majority. You're probably being called to individuation. Probably the mask has already started to fall. And probably there's no turning back. Welcome to the third path. Welcome to the impossibility of pretending. Welcome to yourself.